Today we've got another U.S. Senate retirement. This is going to be in New Hampshire, and it's going to be Democrat Jeanne Shaheen. She's not going to run for re-election next year to a fourth term. So here's the article from AP, and the headline is, "In a blow to Democrats, Senator Jeanne Shaheen will not seek re-election." She's going to join Gary Peters, Tina Smith, and Mitch McConnell as the others that are going to hang it up next year. So we'll go through a little bit of the backstory. We'll take a look at the candidates for next year. We'll look at Jeanne Shaheen's past elections, and we'll see what the Republicans can do if they're looking to flip this seat. So let's get down into it. I'm going to scroll through this. This is definitely a shakeup for the map next year. Now you can look at this two ways. On the one hand, the environment might be favorable for Democrats, so maybe Jeanne Shaheen is retiring at the right time to replace herself with somebody younger and more up and coming. There's that side of it, but on the other hand, this is not an extremely blue state. Another retirement like this is going to place the Dems on the defensive. They're going to have to sink money into this state that Trump only lost by a small margin. I think most people know that on a federal level, the state leans blue. For state politics, it actually leans red. The state house, the state senate, the executive council, and governor, they're all controlled by Republicans. But in the U.S. House, the U.S. Senate, and for president, that's all been won by the Democrats. So in a sense, it's kind of a split state politically. It's way too early to make any actual predictions. We're still more than a year and a half away. One would tend to think that the environment should at least favor the Dems a little bit. But now with Shaheen's retirement, this could reinvigorate some Republicans to make a run here and make this seat competitive. So let's get on Wikipedia. Let's take a look at this race. Now there's not a ton on here because this is fresh news. So here we've got Shaheen. She's declined to run for a fourth term. There's two potential Democrats listed here, and I think they both make a ton of sense. There are two U.S. House districts here, and Maggie Goodlander and Chris Pappas are from both of those districts. They're both definitely young enough. They might be looking at a future in politics, so going up to the Senate is an obvious path for promotion. Now, I don't know which of those two would win if they faced off in a primary. I'm sure we're going to get some of that polling coming up, but Goodlander is brand new to the House. Pappas has been in there for a few terms already. Now for the Dems, it could be somebody else other than these two, but at this early point, they're going to be the logical successors. Since Pappas is a little bit more established, I would maybe give him the edge. Now what about for the Republicans? Well, with Shaheen out of there, it kind of upends the race. There's three candidates listed here. Two of them are notable. First, we've got Scott Brown. The strength of Brown is he was already in the U.S. Senate. The weakness for Brown is that was in a different state. That was neighboring Massachusetts. So Brown already moved to New Hampshire, and he ran for the Senate in 2014 against Jeanne Shaheen. It was very competitive, but Brown did take the loss. So Brown had moderate appeal in the blue state of Massachusetts. Now it's a decade later. Maybe he has more of a connection to the Granite State. I'm not sure exactly how his politics may have changed, but some people might still view him as a carpetbagger and a failure from back in 2014. Now the even bigger name on here is going to be former Governor Chris Sununu. Now Sununu famously declined to run for the Senate back in 22. That was going to give Republicans a solid chance at flipping that seat against Maggie Hassan, but he declined to run, and instead he ran one more time for governor. Now he also already said he's not going to run in 26 against Shaheen, but there was some recent news that he might be reconsidering, and even a poll that showed him leading against Shaheen. So now that Shaheen is actually out of the race, Sununu could easily be having second thoughts. For me, this race is similar to Georgia. There you've got a reasonably popular governor, Brian Kemp. If he runs for the Senate, that's going to give the Republicans their best chance to flip that seat. Just like here, Chris Sununu was popular as governor. If he does go for the Senate, that's going to be the best chance for the Republicans. It doesn't mean he's definitely going to win because the Senate is different from governor. But if it's not Sununu, I would think the Dems would be favored here. Now anything could happen. Maybe it's Scott Brown, maybe it's somebody else. But considering the national environment, without a top-tier candidate, I think this would be more of an uphill climb for the Republicans. So I think all eyes are going to be on Sununu in the near future to see what he's going to do. I may cover this poll in a future video, but you can see it down here. Sununu against Shaheen had him up 8 points, 54 to 46. Shaheen against Scott Brown gave Shaheen a 10-point advantage, 55 to 45. So let's take a quick stroll through Jeanne Shaheen's past Senate runs. First, we're going to go back to 2002. Now this is notable because Jeanne Shaheen was actually the sitting governor at the time of this election. Now her opponent in that race was actually John Sununu, who's the older brother of former Governor Chris Sununu. So you can read about this race here on Wikipedia if you'd like, but this was a reasonably close race, but Shaheen actually lost. Sununu got 51.1, Shaheen 46.7. So that's kind of a big blow to take a loss as the sitting governor. And this was also during a midterm election year that theoretically should have been favorable for the Democrats. Now, obviously, that wasn't the end of Shaheen. 6 years later, it was a rematch. This time, the percentages flipped. In the blue wave environment of 2008, Shaheen won with 51.6. So that's when she won her first term. Again, you could take more of a look at it here if you'd like, and as always, all these links will be down below in the description. Now, 6 years later, it was 2014. That was a red-leaning national environment, and here's where Shaheen faced Scott Brown, and it was a close one. Shaheen got a very similar percentage, 51.5. Scott Brown at 48.2. That one could have went either way, but Shaheen was officially re-elected to a second term. Now let's go ahead 6 more years to 2020. Here Shaheen secured her third term much more comfortably. She was at 56.6. And honestly, I don't even remember this Republican whatsoever, Bryant Corky Messner. He must have been completely forgettable, but he did get 41%. So Shaheen won every county. Biden won the state comfortably at the top of the ticket. And it looks like that's going to be Shaheen's last race. So she's got a successful resume. Several terms as governor, several terms in the Senate. She did take a notable loss, but I would think overall she would view her career as a pretty good success. So what about the Republicans? When's the last time that they won a Senate seat in this state? Well, we don't have to go back super far. We're looking at 2010. That was definitely a big red-leaning national environment. And the winner was future and current governor Kelly Ayotte. She actually topped 60% in this race. That was higher than anything Shaheen ever put up. So a 23-point win there looks highly convincing. She also won every county in the state. With that kind of a margin, you'd think she's got some room to spare and she could go down quite a bit and still win re-election. Well, in 2016, she was actually defeated in an extremely close race. Sitting governor Maggie Hassan took out Ayotte by only about 1,000 votes. This was extremely close, just like the presidential race at the top of the ticket. So even though Ayotte won by 23 points 6 years earlier, this is the kind of state where a lot of votes can swing from election to election. Dems put up a good candidate and Ayotte was finished. Of course, Ayotte came back and she just won election for governor in 24. So one loss does not at all end your political career in this state. Now, in the most recent Senate election in 22, Maggie Hassan won re-election comfortably over Don Bolduc. So this is the most recent Senate election. Again, Dems have success for federal office. Republicans tend to have more of it for state politics. However, the races are usually at least competitive, so either side could win it depending on the candidate, the issues, and the national environment. So we'll close it out here with this news from the other day. It says Sununu considering challenging Shaheen in 26. Now maybe he wasn't really serious and he's just trying to make the news, but now that Shaheen is actually retiring, I think Republicans should be all in on Sununu if they maybe want to flip this seat. Without him, they might have to dip back into somebody like Scott Brown or maybe go into the state Senate or the House. Now one obstacle for Sununu could be a Trump endorsement. There's been past friction between him and Trump, so it remains to be seen how Sununu might posture himself under the current administration. The Dems have Chris Pappas and Maggie Goodlander sitting on the bench and ready to go. This should be a great race to watch. Last week I had this race at likely Democrat. Now I would take it down to leans until we see what happens. Again, this poll shows Sununu leading by about 9 points. That's got to be a big vote of confidence for him to get into that race. But if it starts looking like a big blue wave and a lot of backlash to Trump, that might discourage him from getting in. Either way, this is another seat that the Dems cannot take for granted. They're already looking at an unfavorable map next year. They're going to have to defend Georgia, Michigan, maybe even Minnesota. They're going to try to go on offense in North Carolina and Maine. But now here in the Granite State, New Hampshire is just another thing they're going to have to worry about. So that's a look at what's going on here with Jeanne Shaheen and the Senate race in New Hampshire. So let me know in the comments, what do you think this news does for the state of this race? Do you think it's going to be Chris Pappas for the Dems? Maybe Goodlander? What about the Republicans? Is Sununu going to run? Does Scott Brown have a chance? How does this change the landscape for the midterms? Let me know down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.